All right, so for those watching the video at home, this is going to be programming 1 for October 5th, 2020. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about comments, because I should have talked about these way earlier on in the year, but I guess it just kind of slipped my mind, so I'm going to discuss them. I've been using comments in the code that you guys have seen from me a lot. It's just this double. So there's a lot of ways to write comments. The first way you can do it is you put a double / and then that line becomes a comment, or anything after, I should say anything after the double / becomes a comment. Because I can also take this double / and put it like at the end of another line, and as long as I don't have the comments in front of it, that's fine. Now, another thing I can do is I can use comments to temporarily block some pieces of code. So like in here, let's say for some reason I don't know what my tile X is going to be yet, or I don't want to set the fill color yet. I can put a double / in front of it, and now it's commented out, and the compiler will ignore it. Now, I'm not actually telling you to do that, but the compiler will ignore that, and that's a good way to get rid of, like, if you have a syntax error, or if you think there's a certain line that's causing a problem, you can comment it out, and then if your program runs fine without it, you can say, okay, that line is my problem, or is likely to be my problem, so that is a useful thing. Inside of your init methods, by the way, go ahead and clear out the init methods. You'll see here that I've got mine blanked, and that's fine. And then we'll talk about some other forms of comments here for a second. So that's the single line comment. Single line comment is great for writing little notes to yourself. I use it for writing instructions to you guys. But it's really good for writing little notes to yourself so that your code is explained. And I might actually start having you guys write comments in your code to show that you understand what's going on. As a matter of fact, I don't think it would be unreasonable for me to give a quiz where I have some code already pre-written, and you are supposed to look at it and comment at it what's going on there. So that's the typical use of it. So like the typical use, I'd go in here and be like, single line comment, the following line instantiates a tile, or more likely when you're doing it inline like this, you'd probably go right after it and put like instantiates a tile or something like that. You don't have to do any of this part. I'll tell you when you actually need to write something. Or you could use it to explain what a method does, like okay. Something like that. Now that's a single line comment, but what if I want to do multiple lines? If I only use single line comments, I have to do it every time, and that's kind of irritating. There is a multi-line comment option. You just do /*, and then you can hit enter if you're in the right spot, and it will just make the other one for you, but you notice that there's a */ here. So it's /*// and everything in between here, no matter how long, will be a comment. So I can write multi-line comments that way, which is obviously more efficient than having to put a double / every time. There's also, well actually we'll go over that in a second. There's also this cool feature, and this isn't a feature that every IDE has. A lot of them have it, and IntelliJ has it. Some of them do it differently than others, but it's called making a region. Regions are really useful because, like, look at all these methods we have. We have quite a bit of code in here, and it kind of clutters up our space. And so this is something I want you guys to actually do. Now, I know some of you probably have your init methods like at the top or something. So in the future, I'd ask that you be a little bit more careful about where you put your methods, but that's okay. Just make sure your init method and draw checkerboard are down at the bottom with main. So you should have like these three at the bottom, and then up at the top, you have all this other crap. But, you know, maybe I don't want to delete this other stuff. Maybe I want to keep it for reference. So how do I clean it up without deleting it? Well, if I go to the top here, above all of this stuff that I don't need anymore, I can put 3 slashes and then region. It has to be a lowercase r. And then a space, and then I can name it. So I'll name it like old methods or something. So that starts a region. And then I go to where I want the region to end at. So in this case right here at the end of all these other methods. And I put // end region. And you'll notice that the little minimize sign appears. And if I click that, it takes all those methods, everything in between those 2 points, and collapses them into just this little thing, which is actually really useful. So all of that is now collapsed down, and I only have to worry about what's right here in front of me. This is a great organizational tool. As a matter of fact, this is some code that I wrote, or that I have written, where I've used regions a lot because there's almost 700 lines in this class. It's a very long class. There's a lot to keep track of. Like, look how many variables I have. This is my variable. I have an entire region just for variables because there's this many variables in it. All of those for variables, all that. That is a lot. Now, I've also got other regions for all these different methods, and that way when I go to mess with code in here, I just have to know what it is I'm trying to mess, or what I'm trying to change, and I can just jump into it and only work inside of there without having to see all this other stuff that exists. So that's a really useful tool, that region thing. Not every IDE has it, but IntelliJ does, and so it's a really useful thing to have. Visual Studio also has it, but the syntax is slightly different. In Visual Studio, it's hashtag region, but that doesn't matter. We're using / regions. So hopefully you all did the / region thing like I said to do. Otherwise, that's going to kind of be on you. The final thing, and now you guys are going to actually start copying. The final thing to do is going to be to go public. Actually, let's make it private because we should. Private void draw pyramid. And I'm going to put int n in here, but you don't put that. Just leave your parentheses blank.
Can we get rid of all the other stuff, like up to n and put all of them?
That's what we just did with this. The end region part. That's literally what we just did.
How did you make that region?
So, one more time. To make the region, you go to where you want the region to begin, and you put / region with a lowercase r, and then you give a space, and you write out the name of the region. Then, you go to where you want the region to end, and you put / end region, all one word, all lowercase. That will give you this little minimize button. You click that, boom. They're still there, but they're all collapsed into this old methods region. Really useful. Now draw pyramid I've got here. Once again, don't add the int n here. I'm going to show you something with that, but you don't add it. Leave your parentheses blank, okay? There is one other type of, it's not necessarily a comment, it's called a Java doc, or it's for documentation writing. So it's like I can specifically summarize a method. So if I put /** and hit enter, it gives this green text, and this green text is for describing the method. So I could put something like this method draws a pyramid. And then n could be like the height of the pyramid or something like that. And so that's at param. So it's at parameter n, the height of the pyramid. You don't have to do this, but this can be a useful thing to know how to do. What's really cool about these little Java doc things is I can minimize them as just like another comment. But if I go to call the draw pyramid method like this, and then I hover over it, my documentation for that method appears in this box and explains what this method is for. That is extremely useful if you're working in a group project on something where you might write a method and people aren't going to understand what it does or how to use it. And that little definition next to the parameter says n, the height of the pyramid. And so it tells you exactly what that parameter is going to be used for. That's a really useful tool, and I wish that more classes used it on a regular basis, but not all of them do. But those Java docs are extremely useful, and I'll probably try to start using them more as we go in through further projects. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this int n here, and I'm even going to notice that the Java doc now actually has a syntax error because n no longer exists, so I'm going to get rid of that as well. Draws a pyramid with a base that is 5 bricks wide. Okay, so that's what the draw pyramid is supposed to do. So assuming everyone has gotten this far, the next thing that I'm actually going to have you do is to draw a pyramid. So here's your instructions for that. And the reason I didn't have you minimize draw checkerboard with everything is because they're similar enough that you can use draw checkerboard to help you out a bit. However, it's not exactly the same. First of all, a pyramid is not a checkerboard. A checkerboard is a perfect 8x8 square, right? But a pyramid has different amounts of bricks at different levels, right? So the thing is that for drawing a pyramid, I am going to have to find a way to run for loops at different amounts of times for each run of the loop. So you're going to use nested loops, or use a nested for loop like you did with the checkerboard, to draw a pyramid with 5 rows, where each row has a different number of columns. Okay? A good size for your brick would be 40 by 20. The easiest way is to draw from top down. So that's all the instructions you should need. What you should start by doing is going in here and writing just the nested for loops. Focus on doing the for loops. After you've figured that trick out, then you can start adding stuff. Also, do make sure that you are calling draw pyramid in init so that when you run this program, it'll be testing your draw pyramid, because you will probably need to test this multiple times in order to get this right. Okay? Give it a shot, because I don't really want to give you the answer to this one. I will be taking a grade on these 2 pyramid things that we're going to do once we finish them. What?
I didn't get a chance to watch the checkerboard video.
It's a little long, being the issue. That's draw checkerboard. You don't have to worry about like coloring every other brick. So like these if statements in here that we had in checkerboard, you're not going to need to do that for the pyramid. You're just drawing bricks. As a matter of fact, I'll open up my version here, where so mine's drawing with a base size of 20, but see what it's doing there? This is kind of what we're going for.
Oh, that's exactly what
Well, that is exactly what we're going for. But I put in 20 instead of 5. So yours should only have 5 bricks on the bottom. Mine, you're going to do this next, but mine's doing a specific thing that we'll talk about later. First, I want you to just be able to get a pyramid done with 5 bricks in the bottom row. And if there's 5 bricks in the base, that means that there are also 5 rows total, but each row has a different number of columns in it. And bear in mind, I'm not really going to give you the answer to this one, so I do expect you to try and try and try and try and make different changes. And as maybe a good hint to you, I might write this pseudocode or this type of thing. So like, I have my outer for loop, and in the outer for loop, I might have as a tester to make sure things are worked, that I'm running these the right number of times. I might do a system.out dot print line and say like row printing or something. And then I would do an inner loop and have it, and for each run of the inner loop, I would have it do something like placed brick or something like that. This would be a great way to test whether or not your loops are written correctly, because if you did this right, it would say row printing, and then for the first row, it would print out placed brick. Then it would say row printing, and then it would say placed brick, placed brick. Then it would say row printing, placed brick, placed brick, placed brick, up until you hit 5 placed bricks. Does that make sense? So your output, if your output was correct for the number of bricks that it should have, if your output was correct for the number of bricks you should have, then you'd know your loops were right and you could get working on the actual placement of the bricks. So again, if you were trying to do this right, you would expect to see an output like row printing and then brick placed, then row printing, and then brick placed, brick placed, and then row printing, brick placed. I'm just going to put X3 here to save myself some time. And so on. So this is a good way to find out if you did your loops correctly without having to worry about where the bricks are supposed to go. If you can just get it to print out the lines correctly, then you're in good shape. Once again, I won't really be wanting to give you the answer on this one. Because you would need to extend this graphics program. Control practice has to extend graphics program to get it. So, in all of our projects,
That's the one.
Because there's nothing to override. So we are using graphics program is a different class. Okay. So graphics program is a class somebody else wrote. As a matter of fact, it looks like this. You can see how there's an init method in it. It already exists here. So because we're extending it, all of that code you see here is actually hidden inside of control practice. It has all the same stuff. It is hidden so that it's not cluttered. But we want to, so the init method is actually intended by the people that created the graphics program class to be over. But when you're extending a class, maybe, and we'll get to this later, but so we're overriding this. We're saying use our version of this method instead of the built-in one, because the built-in one's empty. All right, and then for those who are watching this video at home, I don't know how far they're going to get before the end of class. Let's see, it's 12:46. School gets out at 1:30. So they probably won't get to do the draw end pyramid, and if they do, I'll just have to record a separate video about it. But that'll do.